What's up, guys? It's Daz here. Beano Mini Cares. As you can see, we have annotated partially the Lanayru region for all Koroks and treasures. Now, unfortunately, not all of the treasures are marked entirely, but the way we do things around here at the moment, I'm going to start things bit by bit. We go from the southernmost point up to the northernmost point. We end up going west and east as well, like west to east as we go along in order to make things a little bit more fluid and easy to follow. Now, once again, part of the map is not annotated for treasures because there are more than 100 pins, or there are 100 pins on the map right now, so I can't entirely annotate it. So later in the video, as we take on more treasures and Koroks at the same time as this recording, you'll take on and eventually annotate the northern part of the Lanayru region. Anyway, the very first treasure we're going for is over in the Telta Lake. Let's go. Now, there are actually multiple treasures that can be found underwater in Telta Lake. You just need to use Cryonis and Magnesis to pop them all out. Now that that's done, we are next going to go over to Winter Island. There are some in and around Winter Island. Right, first we're going to get the treasures underwater. The first one is to the northeast of the island. And the next is pretty much just directly south, despite what my minimap says. Right, now to take on the treasure actually on the island. This guy is very simply on the northern part of it, if you can even go by directions. It is just simply dug partially underground. Right, now that those three are done, we are next going to go way off to the west. What we're going to do is we're going to do a west to eastern line from this southern point and capture a few of the treasures on our way and then keep going from north along the lines. Right, so next up we're going just south of the Millennium Swamp, I think is what it said there. Right, let's go. So this treasure is actually a Skull Cave campment treasure, and so if you zoom in far enough on your map, you should be able to see the Skull Cave and see exactly where we are, if my map was not enough before. Anyway, we're going to use Bowser's Rage, just, wow, wipe out immediately. I love it. I'm actually in love with it. Right, now that that's done, we're going to go just a little bit east of Rikoka Hills. The treasure here can simply be found inside what remains of this little hut here. Next up, we're going to the Samasa Plains, up on the top of this mountain here. Or mound, I guess, not really a mountain. Here's the treasure. It's simply underground on the mountain. Pretty much exactly where the marker was. Wow, I'm quite impressed with myself. Now that's done, we're now going to go along the coast west of Lanayru Bay. I cannot stop yawning, I'm really sorry. Now there are multiple treasures that can be found along the shore here, just underneath the water, or floating on the surface. Once again, you want to be using Cryonis to go through them all. Right, now that those are all done, we're going to go more to the northwest, onto the shore of the region on the northeast of here even, northeast, just south of the Brina Plain. There's a lot of names around this area. Now, interestingly, these aren't buried underground or already hidden in any way. They're just treasures found on the shore. I guess they just came off from the ocean, or the sea, or the river, or wherever this is supposed to be. I guess this is supposed to be an ocean sea area. Anyway, yeah, they're just on land-ish in the water on the surface. So, nice. Next up, we're going east of here onto the mountain on the southernmost part of the Horan Lagoon, but west of Lodrum Headland. Here we are. It's simply underneath the water in this little cluster of rock. Next, we're actually going to Lodrum Headland, onto the western-ish area of the top of it. Now, this treasure is part of an enemy encampment. Beat your way through. Next up, we're going to the southernmost part, just north of the Tarm Point. Now, careful of this guy. He's got a blue-maned Lionel. But it is a double treasure with a whole lot of rupees for you. And we didn't even have to fight the Lionel. Nice. Right, now we're going to go west and do another line. Starting off just by the stables, and then we're going to do a pretty thick line over to the east. Pretty much getting all the treasure that I actually marked. So the westernmost one here you will find is actually not accessible for us right now because we actually did it as part of a shrine quest. If you come to these stables, you will see an old man on this coast that will give you a shrine quest that gives you a treasure right by this coast. So instead we're going to go a little bit further north from here. On the junction is a tower. At the top of the tower, not the trower, is your chest. Now, guides tell me there's a treasure chest within this forest directly east of the Koroks, but I've been hanging around here for a really long time and I just can't find it. So if you find it yourself, let me know and I'll capture it, but otherwise, I'm lost. So instead, the next treasure we're going to go for is directly into the center of the swamp with this big old island here with at least 4 clump of islands coming off of it. There is a thunderous whiz rope, do be careful, but otherwise the treasure chest is just by the buildings in the Gaponga village ruins. Anyway, now we're going southeast. And this guy's at the top of a tower. Next up, we're going way up north to Linebeck Island. And this guy's simply underneath the ground, underneath the water. He's underneath the ground, but it's in water. It's underground in the swamp. Pretty simple. Right, moving on from there, we're going to go to Banana Island, south of Banana Island. Be careful, there's a guardian around these parts. There's a treasure. It's underneath the ground. There's the guardian, by the way. Right, next up, we're going to go to the Melinda Island. Now, this guy can actually be found underneath the bridge connecting Melinda Island and whatever is east of that. So, it's just on the surface. Grab it for some opal. Right, now that that's done, you can even see the bridge on the map if that helps at all. We're now going to go east of where the Divine Beast lands at the end of this main quest. Now the treasure here is pretty simple. They're both in a body of water east of Varuta at the end of the main quest. Next up, we're going to go onto this mountain here. Just, I don't know what you'd call it, on the other side of the body of water. The first guy is just underground, on the western end of this landmass. The other is up higher, part of an enemy encampment, but it's just a bunch of Lizalfos, which kind of would be tricky because they are kind of speedy, but Abosa Fury make this pretty quick. That was broken English, excuse me. Abosa Fury make this good. I can't remember what I said, but whatever. Next up, we're going to the Briner Plain. There's another skull cave. Fun, fun, fun. Let's fight. Right, next up we're going southeast here on the coast of Briner Plains. Here it is, literally on the coast behind a bombable rock. Alright, now that that's done, we're going to go directly west of the shrine by the Horon Lagoon. It's again, though, on the southern coast of the Jar Abu Ridge. And this guy is simply underground. If it doesn't bounce away from me, though. Next up, we're going northeast of the Horon Lagoon. This guy's just underground again. So next up, we're going to go northeast of the Talus Plateau on the little round mountain land map bit there. Wow, I think I might actually be having a tongue breakdown. Alright, so this treasure is guarded by a couple of enemies. They're pretty strong. And then I found out it wasn't even locked by having the people there. You gotta just run right through. Oh well. Okay. Right, now that that's done, we're gonna go far off to the west and do another line to the east. Now starting off, we're actually gonna go north of these stables again because I added in more treasure annotations because we had more to put in. So right by this pin is where we're going. The first one is a mini enemy encampment. It's not protected by any sort of lock, so you can just run on in, grab it, and run on out again. Bye! Next up, we're going to go just on the west part of the Crenal Peak. There is another enemy encampment for us. Here it is. You can see the tower over there. Now, this enemy encampment's kind of interesting. There's no bokoblins here. The treasure's not locked. It's just a bunch of choo-choos in the tree. It's interesting. I don't think I've ever seen it before, but yeah, that's what it is. Next to the far east part of this landmass, there is a ruins and a whole bunch of enemies. There is a treasure chest for us to get. Not locked by anyone. The next one is to the north of there at the very top of a tower. Next up, we're going to Murkay Island. On Murkay Island, there is a cave underground that goes, not only has actually an enemy encampment and a whole bunch of keys, but it's just, again, another unguarded treasure chest. Next up, we're going east of Murkay Island, and we're going to be taking on an entire sort of snake cavern. It's one long enemy encampment, but nothing is locked down. First is on this northwest island here. The next is on the southern coast of this northernmost island. And the third is in the center of this donut-shaped island to the south. Actually, it's got a square hole, so maybe it's not a donut. Moving on, we're now going to go to the southern coast, if you can even call it that, of the main island by the woods, just by the tower. This guy's, again, another properly, what was it? What would you even call it? Like an unguarded, almost, enemy encampment? You wouldn't really call it unguarded, but anyway, knight shield, whatever. Right. Next up, there's a whole clump of treasures in a row along this main landmass. We're going to go from the northernmost part and go down southeast because it's just a long line that we can go in one long go from west to east. So the first one's on the northern ridge. I keep wanting to say coast even though it's land now. So it's on a shelf on the northern ridge of the main land. Next one's a little bit south, but up high. It is an unguarded enemy encampment directly west of the treasure. The next one's just a tiny bit more west of that. It is another unguarded-ish enemy encampment, just lovely on a shelf here. There is a whole bunch of little caverns here, which is really interesting. I don't think you see this design again. I came back here earlier to get some food in one of the caverns, but one of them has a chest. And now it's a big enemy encampment we found. And the next one is further to the east in this last little body of water. I also realised on the map I think I missed one. I went directly where I thought the marker was, but I think I actually missed one. I could be wrong and whatever, but yeah, now that I'm doing this in post-commentary, I think I might have missed one. Oops, maybe there was two in the alcoves. But now that that's all done, we're now going to go north to the Inogo Bridge. And it's just on the southern coast of the northern part of the land, right by the river. A single bomb arrow. Right, next we're going down south again, onto this landmass again. Just north of the treasure, tower even. And this guy's just pretty high up. I'm about to die on this rock ridge. I protected myself. Well, maybe Daruk's protection doesn't protect from everything. Anyway, next we're now going to go east of the Inogo Bridge. The treasure here can be found at the very bottom of the waterfall, underwater. Now that that's over, we're going to go onto the main path in the Tabal Woods, just a tiny bit east of the straight and narrow part of the path. Part of the path. Sounded really dance-like. Part of the path. It's on this tiny little mound, just a little bit east of the path. Next up, we're going to go directly south, just west of the Bank of Wishes. And this guy is an enemy encampment with 3 Lizalfos. I almost feel like I'd be wasting my Urbosa's Fury if I did use it, but nope. Next up, we're going to go further to the north and a little bit east, directly south, I guess, of the main 180-degree turn. The treasure here is hidden behind the vines on the northern end of this little mound here. Burn through them and get the treasure on the other side. Next up, we're going right to the Bank of Wishes. And simply underneath the water, it's there. Oh man, I can't stop yawning. Even though it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm really not good at this, huh? Next up, we're going further up Zora River. Again, though, this guy is just underwater at the bottom of the waterfall. Next up, we're going to the big bridge southeast of the Bank of Wishes. Not winches. Now, one can be found just simply on the rocks on the water that are just there. The other 2 can be found underwater nearby to it. Another one can be found just nearby to it underneath the water. The other one is underwater on the other side of the Auron Bridge. Oddly enough, that didn't show up on the main map, which is kind of interesting to me, but yeah. And now with that, we're going to go up north, just south of Raleigh's Pond, at the top of this mountain, along this wishy-washy path. And this guy's part of an enemy encampment, but it's unguarded, so if you come in from the back, maybe they'll never notice you. Next up, we're going to the east. And we want the body of water right by the east coast of this landmass because by the coast, underneath the water, is this chest. Moving on more, we want to go to the island just a tiny bit north of Luto's Crossing. The treasure here is just off the bank on the northwest part of the island. Next up, we're going to the northern island from here. The treasure can simply be found east of the island, hidden underneath some lily pads, some sort of foliage in the water. Next up, we're going southeast of here, just south of the Wiggly Woggly path. Underneath the ground here, just sort of hidden by bushes and trees, is your chest. Next up, we're going east of the Rutala Dam. At the end of Rutala Dam and up a level, there is a bummable rock that has your chest. Next up, we're going further along the Jaraboo Ridge. The treasure can be found just south of that landmass in the mark there. It's like much south of the highest part. It's underground on this little ridge here. Next up, we're going to do another line. We're going to go from the western part of the... I can't quite see what the Zora domain ridge bit is there, but we're going to do a nice long line along there, taking on all of Zora's domain as well. The first guy is an unguarded enemy encampment. I'm going to say, no, unlocked doesn't work either. I'll keep thinking about it. This is just west of the... This is basically west in the very bottom of the actual Zora's domain part. Next up, a couple levels higher, is just a simple chest on its own. The next treasure is along the southern ridge of this main west wing, underneath this bummable rock here. Next up, we're going to the very southernmost part of the Great Zora Bridge. Now, first of all, the treasure here is directly underneath the bridge at the southernmost point of the Great Zora Bridge. It's just underneath this, it's just on this little ridge, on this little island, I guess. It's just on this little ridge down here. Next one is by the waterfall underneath Great Zora Bridge. And this guy's simply at the bottom, underneath and behind the waterfall. Moving further into Zora's domain, we now want to go to the western eastern end of the big circle surrounding it. These are pretty easy to understand where they are, so I'm just going to basically skip over them. Next up, we're going to the southwest portion of Zora's domain, just a little bit west of the southwestmost pillar. By the water at the bottom there is a treasure chest underground. A little further to the north, just south of the westernmost pillar, on the ground is a chest. Next up, we're going to the very center of Zora's domain. My marker's a little off, but you can just see that the treasure chest on land in the center of Zora's domain, at the bottom. Next up, we're going further north along the western part of the big pillar underground. It turns out this treasure that I got is actually the northernmost treasure here, so do excuse me. I got a little carried away, I guess, even though the perspective seemed right. So now we're going to try and go for the one on the western part of this Zora's domain part. It's not actually on the bottom wall, like bottom level. The chest can be found west of the throne room. Oh, it's Silver Shield too. That's different. There isn't one on the eastern end of the throne room. It's the same layout, but not a treasure chest there, which is interesting. Next up, we're going to the eastern part of the Zora's domain. Now, the two treasures are surrounding this eastern pillar, and they are both underwater. Next up, we're going to the western part of the dam on the north part of the East Reservoir Lake. There's a lot of northwest, east, and no south, but still confusing. Here is the chest. It's just along the west part of this dam, if it's even a dam. Next up, we're going to go further to the east on this body of water by the Tal Tal Peaks. Next treasure is in this body of water, at the bottom of the waterfall, underneath the water. Next, we're going to go to this little ridge west of the Spool Bite. Here we are. It is another open key. Oh, star fragment. Enemy encampment. Cool. Star fragments are pretty rare, so I wouldn't expect them to be in a chest. Huh. Nice. Alrighty. Next up, we're going to the northernmost peak of the Zora Curve. There's supposedly a treasure chest in this region, but I really cannot find it, so I'm going to call it a bust. I'm sorry. If you can tell me where it is, let me know. So instead, we're now going to go to Toto Lake, and this is actually a treasure we already got by following the side quests. The treasure chest would end up here, but it will give you the Zora Helm. So instead, we're going to move on and go to the body of water down south of Toto Lake. The treasure chest can be found underwater at the bottom of the waterfall in this tiny little narrow neck point. The second waterfall, basically. The first treasure chest here is at the bottom of the waterfall, simply underwater like all the other ones. The other one can actually be found in a ridge behind the waterfall. Good luck getting to it. It took me quite a while. Moving on, we're now going to go to the next waterfall. It's probably the same thing. It is again behind the waterfall on a ridge. Next up, we're going to go to this tiny little body of water just northwest, or really just north of the Tal Tal Peaks. The treasure on this one is actually much easier because it's at the bottom of the waterfall. It's still behind it, but that's much better than the earlier ones. Now that that's done, we're done with Zora's domain on land. We just need to take on the islands that come with it. So we're going to go from the southernmost point and take our way up. So next up, we're going to Knuckle Island. At the peak of Knuckle Island, underneath the ground, is your treasure chest. Interestingly enough, I actually didn't see it straight away, so I ended up exploring the entirety of Knuckle Island first. There's a whole lot of ore deposits here, so that's nice, but yeah, all for bomb arrows, of course. Right, next up, we're going to the northeast part of Knuckle Island. And this guy's pretty much just hidden away and protected by a single bokoblin. Very open key. That's the word I'm going to use now. So with those two done, we're now going to go to the western part of this island here. I think that still counts as Ankle Island, but I'm not certain. That's where we're going, though. This treasure's hidden underneath a bunch of metallic boulders. Now that we're done with that, we're going to go to the eastern part of Ankle Island. This treasure chest can simply be found along the eastern face of Ankle Island, behind a bombable rock. On the northern part of the central part of Tingle Island, there is an enemy encampment. It's an open key one though, so not too hard. And the final treasure is just a tiny bit north, underground from there. Now with that, we have collected every single treasure in the entire Lanayru region. An odd feat that I feel like not many people do. Anyway, on that note, I am going to end it off here because there's nothing else to do here. So for now, I'm going to delete these stamps. There we go. My name's been Daz. You didn't really care. And we've completed 100% the entire Lanayru region. What's next? You're going to have to find out tomorrow. For now, my name's been Daz. You didn't really care. And I'll see you in a bit.